The Old West, often characterized by its lawlessness and rugged individualism, had a unique and evolving system of justice. The challenges of maintaining order in a vast, sparsely populated, and often violent frontier required a mix of formal and informal methods to enforce the law. This blend of frontier justice included everything from makeshift courts and vigilante committees to the early establishment of formal legal institutions. 1. Early law enforcement. In the early days of the frontier, formal law enforcement was sparse. Small, remote settlements often had no official law officers, relying instead on the community to uphold order. Common law enforcement figures included town marshals and sheriffs. These officials were often elected by the community and were responsible for maintaining law and order. Their jurisdiction typically covered towns and counties. Federal marshals, appointed by the federal government, they had the authority to pursue fugitives across state lines and enforce federal laws. 2. Vigilante committees. In the absence of established legal systems, many frontier communities resorted to vigilante justice to deal with crime. Vigilante committees, composed of local citizens, took the law into their own hands. While they were intended to protect the community and maintain order, their actions were often extrajudicial and could be brutal. Notable vigilante groups. The Montana Vigilantes, formed in the 1860s to combat rampant crime in the mining camps, are one of the most famous examples. They executed dozens of suspected criminals without formal trials. Mob justice. Public hangings and lynchings were not uncommon, with mobs often forming spontaneously to punish suspected wrongdoers, bypassing any legal proceedings. 3. Makeshift courts. As towns grew, makeshift courts began to appear, often held in saloons, general stores, or even outdoors. These courts were presided over by community leaders or elected judges, who used a mix of common law and local customs to adjudicate disputes and crimes. Circuit judges. In more developed areas, circuit judges traveled between towns to hold court sessions, bringing a semblance of formal justice to remote locations. Judge Roy Bean, known as the Law West of the Pecos, Roy Bean dispensed a unique brand of justice from his saloon courtroom in Texas, often making rulings based on his own interpretation of the law. 4. Types of punishment. Punishments in the Old West varied widely, reflecting the rough nature of frontier life and the limited resources available for law enforcement and incarceration. Common punishments included fines and restitution. Minor offenses often resulted in fines or orders to pay restitution to the victim. Corporal punishment. Public whippings and branding were used to punish and shame offenders. Incarceration. Jails were often rudimentary, consisting of a single cell or a makeshift holding area. More serious offenders were sometimes transported to larger towns or cities with proper jail facilities. Capital punishment. Hanging was the most common form of execution for serious crimes like murder and horse theft. Executions were often public events, meant to deter others from committing crimes. 5. Famous lawmen and outlaws. The Old West is famous for its colorful characters on both sides of the law. Legendary lawmen like Wyatt Earp, Bat Masterson, and Wild Bill Hickok became symbols of frontier justice, known for their gunfights and efforts to bring order to chaotic towns. Conversely, infamous outlaws such as Billy the Kid, Jesse James, and the Younger Brothers epitomized the lawlessness of the era. 6. Legal evolution. As the frontier became more settled, the legal system gradually evolved to become more formalized and structured. Territories gained statehood, established court systems, and developed more sophisticated law enforcement agencies. The establishment of legal codes and the construction of courthouses marked the transition from frontier justice to a more conventional legal system. Territorial and state courts. As territories transitioned to statehood, they established formal courts with appointed judges and legal procedures, reducing the reliance on vigilante justice. Penitentiaries. States built penitentiaries to house long-term inmates, reflecting a shift towards incarceration over corporal punishment and execution. 7. Impact on American legal tradition. The experiences of the Old West contributed to the development of the American legal tradition in several ways. Emphasis on self-reliance. The frontier ethos of self-reliance and community justice influenced American attitudes towards law enforcement and individual rights. Development of federal law enforcement. The challenges of frontier lawlessness helped spur the development of federal law enforcement agencies, such as the U.S. Marshals Service. Cultural legacy. The stories of frontier justice, lawmen, and outlaws have become an enduring part of American folklore and popular culture, shaping the nation's identity and historical narrative. Frontier justice in the Old West was a complex and often brutal system that reflected the harsh realities of life on the American frontier. It was a time when communities had to improvise and adapt to maintain order in a lawless land. While often marked by violence and extrajudicial actions, the evolution of justice in the Old West laid the groundwork for the more formalized legal systems that followed. The legacy of this era continues to captivate the imagination and remains a significant chapter in the history of American law and order.